At the United Nations Palace in Geneva, more than 10 months ago, participants in the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum praised Stephanie Williams, the UN envoy to Libya, as acting at the time, to the extent that he described her as the steadfast and patient Iron Lady and that she deserves appreciation and respect. The source of the praise, at the time, was that the Dialogue Forum succeeded in early February, under the auspices of the UN envoy, who later left her position, in electing a temporary executive authority, represented by the Presidential Council led by Ambassador Muhammad al-Manfi, and the National Unity Government headed by wealthy businessman Abdul Hamid al-Dabaiba, to carry out specific tasks. It begins with national reconciliation, and ends with holding presidential and parliamentary elections, on the 24th of December 2021, at which time the Libyans rejoiced, and their words said, "It is time for us to rest from the trouble of fighting and division." However, before the year ended with all the bickering that it witnessed between the enemies, Williams returned to the country with greater functional powers as an advisor to the Secretary-General of the United Nations, with the intent of saving the misguided electionship. The date set for holding it by 2 days, the High Electoral Commission announced its postponement, and proposed to the House of Representatives to organize it on the 24th of January. The country is Richard Norland, because Libyans cannot choose the future of their country. And in about 10 months, the life of the executive authority, Libya witnessed many details and stations, between the beginning of the year with its great breakthrough, and its end, which disappointed the citizens even more, which prompted them to ask several questions about those responsible for the stumble of the political path, the failure of the electoral process, and the assumption of a side it is the responsibility of their politicians, and of the UN mission, which has already won praise for not holding the obstructionists accountable. The future of the Dabaiba government. A big difference now, between the positive atmosphere that prevailed in Libya when the new executive authority took over their duties in mid-March, in a smooth transition between two warring administrations, and what the country is witnessing at present, after the failure of the concerned authorities to hold elections according to the time frame agreed upon in the Geneva meetings sponsored by the United Nations, and 2.8 million Libyans who received their electoral cards, have to wait for a later date set by the quarrelsome parties aspiring to ascend the throne. In order to hold on again to the threads of the political game, the House of Representatives formed a committee of 10 representatives entrusted with preparing a proposal for a new road map for the next stage, but this did not prevent many fears that postponing the entitlement to a later date soon, or for a period that may last for months to come, will be followed by the deportation of all legal obstacles and the security objections that prevented its completion the first time, in addition to The fact that any delay will be accompanied by the dismissal of the Dabaiba government, and the appointment of another alternative to it, according to the option supported by the Eastern Libya Front, which is strongly opposed by supporters of the executive authority in Tripoli, the capital, amid warnings of the return of institutional division, and the subsequent possible armed conflict. Politicians who spoke to Asharq al-Azad believe that the reasons that made the elections negligent in December will fail in any other month, unless they are addressed and resolved. Among them, according to them, are the election law issued by Parliament, which they described as defective. Political analyst Issa Abdal Gayoom summed up his opinion that unless elections are held that prove the truth of the peaceful transfer of power, there is no value for February, in reference to the February 17 revolution that overthrew the late Colonel Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. From Berlin to Paris. Critics blame Dabaiba for being, in their opinion, missing a golden opportunity by neglecting the preparations for the elections and devoting state funds to support youth initiatives with the intention of expanding his popular base, given the size of his government's spending in the past 10 months, which exceeded $90 billion. According to data from Parliament, but Dabaiba, whose candidacy for the presidency caused both uproar and rejection by his opponents, saw that his government had successfully dealt with the inherited crises accumulated over the past decade. In the face of the stalemate in the electoral process, Germany rushed to organize the Berlin II Conference, under the auspices of the United Nations, on the 23rd of June 2021, with the participation of all international forces concerned with the Libyan file, and the most prominent local parties to the Libyan conflict. The conference, which was attended by the interim government, came a year and a half after the first meeting Berlin won, and aimed mainly at the necessity of the withdrawal of mercenaries and foreign forces from Libya, and the emphasis on holding the elections on time, which are the same points he focused on Paris Conference also on the 12th of November, last. Al-Dabaiba, who attended the conference, affirmed his commitment to organizing these elections, but his opponents saw that he had taken the country to where he wanted, taking advantage of spending money on projects that he was not assigned to, with the aim of establishing a presence in power. This is the justification provided by Parliament Speaker Akila Saleh in his council voted to withdraw confidence from the government on the 25th of September. Haftar, and his competitors. And the year 2021, when he was about to leave a good impact on the Libyans, who resolved to elect their first president in the country's history. However, political bickering, the controversial nature of some candidates, and the intervention of international parties in terms of supporting candidates at the expense of others, contributed to delaying this path. The competition for the seat of government in Libya expanded to include 96 candidates, and opened the way for a wide battle of electoral appeals, in light of a conflict that raged with the presence of prominent names, but, before announcing the postponement of the elections by 3 days, Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar, Commander-in-Chief of the National Army, hosted for the first time, in the city of Benghazi, some of his opponents in the presidential elections, not including Aguila Saleh, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, or Saif al-Islam Gaddafi. This meeting, which included Fathi Bashagha, Ahmed Madik, Al-Arif al-Naid, Abdelmajid Seif al-Nasr and Muhammad al-Muntasir, was considered a step towards the path of reconciliation between eastern and western Libya, anticipating any negative reaction to the postponement of the entitlement. While waiting for what the first months of the new year will reveal of the difficult labors of the new year, some see Saif Gaddafi's candidacy as causing confusion and confusing the contestants, in addition to becoming an actual target for the majority of armed groups loyal to his opponents, in addition to amnesty.